and welcome back to Cooking with MoWino. Cheers! We are on a field trip in the dining room, and I am calling this segment Thanksgiving Gravy 101. So, for many years, my grandmother just cooked and made the most amazing gravy out of nothing. Both my grandmothers, my New York grandmother and my Florida grandmother. My Florida grandmother would use the fabulous drippings from whatever roast or turkey that she was making, and it would be a beautiful brown gravy. My New York grandmother, I don't know what she would do, but all of a sudden, out of nothing, she seemed to have a huge saucepan full of gravy that she would make from butter and flour and chicken broth. So nobody ever could live up to my grandmother's gravy. And then one of the greatest things, about 3 or 4 years ago, my mother came into the kitchen, took me to the side and said, "You have inherited your grandmother's gravy greatness." And I have been making gravy ever since for the family dinners. So that was a big honor. But I actually make my gravy different than both my grandmothers because I have the favorite ingredient, wine. And this wine that we're going to be making gravy with and drinking is the Gold Cup, Governor's Cup, best wine in the state of Virginia this year from Horton Vineyards, and it is their Petit Manseng. It's a very dry wine. So when I make gravy, I always use dry white wine. So there's just a couple things I want to share with you before we have our demo. Other most important ingredients next to the wine is butter and a whisk. You must make your gravy with a whisk because the basis of the gravies are generally flour or cornstarch. And I use cornstarch, but the whole key is you must cook out the flour, cook out the cornstarch, and constantly whisk it into your drippings so that it doesn't get clumpy, and you don't want it to taste like flour or cornstarch. So wine, whisk, and butter are your main ingredients, or at least my main ingredients to gravy. Then a couple other things. Always for Thanksgiving, because we were always scared, are we going to have enough gravy? Is the gravy going to come out good? Blah, blah, blah. We always cheated and kept a jar of some sort of gourmet gravy on the shelf to either extend our gravy or to be an emergency salvation if our gravy flopped. I recently discovered this, it's called Better Than Bouillon, and basically what it is a highly concentrated paste of really delicious ingredients. The whiff of, I just got beef. Woo, beef. You can basically, the thing is here, put a teaspoon into whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden the low and slow and long time goodness that you get on top of the stove, you can get in a matter of seconds. This is also good to put a little teaspoon in if you think your gravy is a little too floury, because it does happen. And then my cousin, when she used to make gravy, she always put in a packet of onion soup mix to help with the flavor component. So those are just a couple of store-bought accents to help your gravy. Several years ago, I think it was Martha Stewart, I don't know, who was doing a turkey and literally put on the bottom of the turkey pan all of the fresh aromatics that I use all the time. Carrots, celery, and onions. Just covered the entire bottom of the turkey pan and then rested the turkey on top of it. Now they cook down, and they're not the kind of vegetables you're going to serve on the side as a side dish, but what you can do is get the good tasty components of these fresh vegetables into your gravy. You can strain them out and get them if you have them in small clumps or chopped up. Actually, one person chops them all up and really does put them as part of our gravy. But anyway, we put big chunks so that we can easily pick them out at the end of when we start to stir up our gravy. So here we go. This is a couple of just time-saving tips and some definite necessities to making a good gravy. And now we're going to try to make one, fingers crossed, with some drippings that I have from a roast chicken left over. Hi, welcome back. And now we're going to try to do a demo of making a very simple, quick gravy. So I have my cast iron skillet, which I baked a chicken, and we have all the drippings. We've taken off some of the grease that came out, but for the most part we have nothing but pure goodness here. In fact, there's already a caramelization on the pan with some little bits of onion that were stuck to the pan that we couldn't pull out. So we're just sort of incorporating them in, just scraping. That's basically a lot what you do with the gravy is you scrape the goodness off the bottom of the pan, the caramelization, the burnt parts, to do it. So what I've already done is I've made my slurry. And what it is, I usually take a small little jar and I put 2-to-1 components. A tablespoon of cornstarch to 2 tablespoons of the dry white wine. So that's what I've done here. And you have to make sure your pan is really hot. You want your drippings and the little bits of broth that are in here to be hot. Got my whisk. And so I'm slowly adding my slurry to the pan. And I'm switching now to my whisk. Whoops. And you can already see that it's thickening up. You probably can't see. See? It doesn't look pretty now, but it will. How's that? So we're going to add our wine. And what people can do is you can add your wine and a combination of broth. The big line is you're trying to make a thick, soft broth. Sorry, you must use this whisk. So here we have some, it's coming along, but I need a little more. We want to make sure it stays really hot. So I'm going to add some more white wine. And just a little more of my slurry. Put it all in. The key is not to put it all in at once. You want to slowly incorporate it. And you got to keep stirring. You don't want to see any clumps of flour or cornstarch with all the flavors from our baked chicken, which will be turkey for you all for Thanksgiving. But it is very thick. I made it thick on purpose because I want to extend it because we have a big crowd coming and you want to make sure you have enough gravy. So what I usually do, if I don't have any homemade broth, I make a cup of instant chicken soup or chicken broth, and I just got to keep the flame on so it keeps boiling high. And now I'm just incorporating this chicken broth from stock to extend our brown gravy so that we have enough on the table. Again, I continue to use my whisk, scraping from the bottom of the pan. And I want to taste it because I don't want to water down the broth too much. I want to make sure it stays potent with the drippings. Good. I think it's safe to put the rest of this cup of chicken broth. Now, this is where it gets tricky. If you think you've started to water down your gravy, kick the flame back up, make another slurry, and then you can thicken it up very easily. But I think this is going to be great. Now this is where my cousin would put in her packet of onion soup mix. That's just how she made it. Me, right now, I probably would put in some fresh herbs like thyme or rosemary or even sage if it's Thanksgiving. And you can take the pot off and put it into a small saucepan, and so you can keep it warm and easy on the stove to pour it into your gravy boats, bring to the table. See, it's starting to come up to a boil now again, and the boiling will help with the reaction to the cornstarch and make it thick again. And the best way to see if your gravy is thick is use a spoon. And on the back of your spoon, if you could draw a line, see that? A line straight through, then you know you have thick gravy. The very last thing you want to do to your gravy is add a pat of butter. So I have about 1 tablespoon of butter, depending on how much gravy you're going to make. I don't know what it is, but the last final component, if you think your gravy's no good and you put the butter in, I'm telling you, it always solves whatever gravy problem you have. Anyway, it adds a creaminess and a shininess just before you serve it. I put in a tablespoon, but I think this might warrant a little more, but we're just going to go for it like this. We're going to use this gravy, by the way. This was a demo for Thanksgiving prep, but I'm going to use this gravy tonight with a brisket that I'm going to cook in the oven. So I might add some peppercorns and maybe some sliced mushrooms to it. So once you have the basis, you can go anywhere with it. Cheers. The chef's glass is empty because she put it in the sauce, but cheers. Live life, taste life, and happy Thanksgiving. Hope you have great gravy goodness.